week, so I'll talk to you then, okay?
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Combines a non-drowsy antihistamine with a powerful decongestant for fast relief that starts working in just 1 hour. Breakthrough allergy congestion with Allegra D. Use only as directed. Guaranteed or your money back. Visit Allegra.com.
Well, I wanted to go there with Joe Rexroad and ask him a couple questions off the air. There was a sense to me, and this really goes into where I think the Titans just, what an organization, you know. I mean, remember the 3 things I told you yesterday? Your organization as a football team is probably pretty bad if, and the 3 things that I said, you can tell, you know, if your owners are bad, if A, they move the team, you're to blame for us losing, fans, we're firing you. Yeah, that's really good. Customer is wrong. Cold-hearted, you know, take all this tax money. Oh, you built us this, spent all these millions of dollars building us a new stadium, but that was 20 years ago. We're going back to Los Angeles. You know, that's a sign of a bad owner. Number 2, sign of a bad owner, is meddlesome, which Bud Adams was with Jeff Fisher. I mean, let's face it, you know, you must play Vince Young. He's not ready yet. You must play Vince Young. And the third thing is losing. And the Titans have only just started to win after a long stretch of losing. So I do believe that the Titans are not one of the great organizations in the NFL. Then again, I would have said, if you asked me a few months ago, that the Panthers probably were one of the better ones before this all broke out with Jerry Richardson. Then again, just because you have, I don't mean to diminish some of the allegations of Jerry Richardson are creepy. Can I shave your legs, ma'am? I mean, come on. But at the same time, that is one cog of an organization. We'll put that down that way. But anyway, what I was getting to is that, you know, it initially was that Josh McDaniel was the one they wanted to target. And, you know, when they fired Marky, and the idea was, oh, they'll go after McDaniel, who's already known, you know, the Colts wanted him. And, you know, people on competing media outlets say, well, who wouldn't want to come to Nashville? And, you know, well, if you've got an agreement with the Colts, you know, they've got a good quarterback there, too. I mean, they were not that far away from the AFC Championship game. There's some building blocks there, yes, but you can, you know, live in Nashville, and that's fine. Some people like open-wheel racing in Indianapolis. You know, some people like flatland, which we don't quite get under here, but, you know, some people like Indiana, you know. Some people like Green Bay. I mean, you know, that's the one thing that, you know, is, well, you can come here to our great city. There are 31 cities. I guess there are now 30 cities in the NFL. And they pretty much all think that they're the best city in the NFL. You know, if you really want to get down to brass tacks, I mean, you know, don't you like graffiti? Come to Philly. But I don't really like graffiti, to tell you the truth, so that would be... Hey, the big news. I mean, it was on the cover of the sports page right here. I got a Battle of Bristol, another one coming up. We don't know when. We don't know who. We don't know if it's college. We don't know if it's pro. But there's going to be another football game with really bad sightlines at Bristol Motor Speedway. I theorized, started the show, you know, what you'd like to see here. I mean, theoretically, my wild dream, my, you know, oh my goodness, you know, my, if you're going to give me, you know, my dream date with 1975 Linda Carter, I mean, you know, or something like this. I really should be thinking a little bit more contemporary, shouldn't I? With Sarah Jane Underwood, you know, if you're going to be giving me my dream date, then the Super Bowl, which by the way, as I said, the one argument you could make there is the ticket revenue. I mean, you're looking at 300 to 400 million, if not $500 million in ticket revenue. And that's face. That's what the NFL would take in if you could put the Super Bowl in Bristol. Now, if you ever did that, first of all, let me tell you two things. First of all, this area would be lambasted. Why are we having the Super Bowl out in the middle of nowhere? That's what they would be saying nationally. But be breaking in, the cab drivers and the waitresses and, the store owners, they'd be making a lot of money. Maybe you put up with that. Number two, that you would have, the reason why I don't really think it's feasible is it just isn't the hotel space around here. I mean, you got people for the race in August, not so much the race in the spring anymore, but the race in August, staying where? Asheville, Roanoke, Knoxville to go to BMS. That's not practical really for a Super Bowl. You need more hotel space than what the area has. And that's what's going to keep that dream of mine from really coming to fruition. But what could you have? A bowl game? It's going to be difficult, I think, for a football game to draw the same crowd that they did last time. 156,000. It's not going to be as new. Is the matchup going to be as appealing? You had the idea of 156,000 fans was more or less, okay, Tennessee draws 100,000 fans. They'll all drive up to Bristol. And Virginia Tech, they draw 60,000 fans. They'll all drive down from Blacksburg. Bingo! There's the crowd. Well, it doesn't quite work that way because you got some people, who are coming from, Virginia Tech from Fairfax. They're not going to come down to Bristol for, to sit in nosebleed seats. They're to watch the game on TV. That's what they'll do. Excuse me here. Just now getting over the sickness. But what you will have is a circumstance where you would have the Tri-Cityans, who otherwise wouldn't go to the Virginia Tech or the Tennessee game in Knoxville or Blacksburg. They'll go to the game. That's what would make up. The locals would make up the people who won't travel to the game. But again, the fad would wear off. So what would you do that would be bigger than Tennessee, Virginia Tech? And there are bigger events out there that you could have. Do you have Tennessee or Virginia Tech coming in? Now, one of the interesting things, if you remember on this show, when John Curry was the AD last summer, he was on here, and I asked him specifically, hey, look, the Vols, they play baseball in the Tri-Cities every year against ETSU. But last year, the Vols really made a statement locally. The Lady Vols played in the Mini Dome. The men's basketball team played at Freedom Hall. And the football team played at BMS, as well as the baseball team playing ETSU here. So you really had Tennessee embracing, the University of Tennessee embracing their Tri-Cities fan base like never before. I mean, it had been 53 years since the basketball team had played here in Johnson City. With the success, the sellouts, the victories that Tennessee enjoyed here, would they consider scheduling more events such as women's basketball, men's basketball, football in the Tri-Cities? John Curry, when he was the AD, didn't come right out and say it, but he basically alluded no. Now he's not the AD anymore. Now it's Phil Fulmer. Maybe things have changed. One thing about Tennessee is after their 4-8 season last year, they need something to create momentum. Say this about the Battle of Bristol, but it turned a mediocre football program. Really a losing football program, although I know they had been 7-6 the year before. into a 9-win football program for a couple of years. Maybe there was the lure of recruiting. Hey, don't you want to play in front of the biggest crowd ever in college football? Maybe there was that lure. Maybe there was the feeling, the pageantry that Tennessee puts so close to their breast that they really kind of overrate. But in this element, maybe 2 years ago, it was 2 years ago, 2016, maybe it worked. Now they've got to go back at 4-8. What do they have to draw? Maybe Tennessee is trying to go back to the drawing board again and say, can we do this over again? Can we have that, because we're a losing team now, and we need some sort of big event. Something other than running through the tee and getting smashed by Alabama. We need Battle of Bristol. Tennessee hasn't been confirmed as the team that's going to be playing there, keep in mind. I mean, it may be a pro game. Heck, 10 years ago, I theorized, does anybody remember this? Back in, it was TriCitiesSports.com. We're Tri-Cities Sports now, but I used to write for TriCitiesSports.com. And I wrote the most famous article ever in TriCitiesSports.com. I'm telling you it is, so it is. And 10 years ago, so back when they did a print edition, it was actually on the cover. I don't know how many people will remember this. I hope many do, because it did have impact, I think, in restoring football to ETSU. South Florida, 2007. Had just defeated a very strong West Virginia team, and South Florida was now the number 2 team in the country. And what I did is I wrote a fictitious piece that basically put ETSU, with no football team at the time, in South Florida's place. Now, ETSU is the number 2 football team in the country. And I wrote this little fantasy up and all this. And the idea was that in 1996, ETSU was a playoff football team, 10-3. But South Florida didn't even have a team. So, as recently as 10 years before, ETSU had had a better football program than South Florida. Why couldn't they have made the rise that South Florida had done to become the number 2 team in the country at the time? What would it have taken? And so I kind of made up a fantasy element of this. And one of the ideas that I had was, okay, what if ETSU used BMS as their football stadium? You really think they're going to draw 150,000 fans a week? No, I do not. But the idea was that if you were going to improve your football program, if you were going to try to become a major college football power, maybe if you had a 150,000 seat stadium and you scheduled your own money game. In other words, you said, we're ETSU, but we've got this big stadium. I know, University of Texas, somebody who draws. Why don't you come here? Your fans will love coming to Johnson City, Tennessee, or Tri-Cities, Tennessee. Look at all we have to do here in terms of outdoors and country music and the racing, and this is very Texas orientated, you know? This has interest to Texans. And you can come here, you can see the Bristol country, birthplace of country music. You can go hiking, you can go fishing, this sort of thing, as well as go and see the Longhorns beat up on ETSU. And you schedule your own money game. But then after a while, you keep playing these big boys, you keep getting better football players to come to your program, and eventually you then start playing with, say, the Texases and the Notre Dames and the Penn State. Now, this is much easier said than done. Okay, but I want to go back to that story and all this and talk about Battle of Bristol. We're going to have a Battle of Bristol 2. Would an ETSU playing a money game, Tennessee, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Penn State, Michigan, Notre Dame, someone who draws, Alabama, someone who'll travel, Again, Texas, I'm like, so much, Clemson, I mean, these are, South Carolina, these teams draw a lot of fans, and it's not that far away. Michigan, Ohio State, coming in. Maybe they'll put the drumming on ETSU, but instead of having a less than $500,000 payout, which ETSU is getting from North Carolina, go to Chapel Hill in 2020, you can make your own money. You can really promote this. Oh, yeah, probably there'll be more visitor fans than home fans in that situation, or maybe not. Maybe this is a one-time for the Tri-Cities to really show up and have, instead of 13,000 fans after the fact coming in to see ETSU play Western Carolina in BMS a couple of years ago, you'd have a, hey, Tri-Cities, you don't want to be outdone in your own backyard. Get behind the Bucks. And if 50,000 people from, let's just say Michigan is who they're, another 50,000 people from this area come up and they root for the Bucks. And you have 100,000 people in there for an ETSU game. And that's how an athletic program grows. Oh, sure, ETSU get a drubbing, don't get me wrong. But you would get higher caliber of players and you would advance a step as an athletic program. And you'd be making a lot of money. And you'd get a lot of exposure. And you'd have really bad sight lines, folks. That's the one thing about the Battle of Bristol, is that the sight lines stunk. My goodness, like, Virginia Tech has the ball. Yeah, that's what's going on right now. It was the one thing that they didn't do. It'll be difficult to top last time's event. It really will be. But be exciting to hear what's going to come out. And the only thing is, I hope that BMS is not quite so tight-lipped on this. I really would like to see what's coming out on this aspect. Anyway, but that is that. Oh, let's see here. The Hall of Fame vote, Baseball Hall of Fame vote, is tomorrow. Comes out 6 o'clock. There should be a large class inducted. There are many worthy candidates. Some candidates that are unworthy. There is a website out that is, I won't call it a polling, but they've got an early ticker, if you will, on who's going to make it and who won't. And I got the skinny for you right now. And I'm going to tell you, sneak preview here, 50% of the ballots are in. We can call these races in some states, if you will. Who's going to go to Cooperstown tomorrow? I'll tell you on Tri-City Sports Now.